All right, good morning. Oh, you know, it's Monday, it's budget day. Good evening. It's nice to see everybody. I'm going to call the August 19th City Council meeting to order, 6:05 p.m. And if you'll please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Let's see. We'll go ahead and get started with our meeting this evening. And Ms. Trimble, if you will go ahead and do roll call for us.
Happy to. Anderson. Absent. Becerra.
Present.
Campbell.
Here.
Carlino.
Present.
Farmer. I missed that. Is Farmer here?
I do not believe so.
Okay, absent.
Absent. Yeah.
Jones.
Present.
Jordan. Present. Melson.
Present.
Nugent.
Present.
Savage.
Present.
Sherrill.
Present.
Vasecka.
Present.
All right, and we do have a quorum.
All right. Thank you very much. We do not have any minutes to approve this evening, and our next agenda item is on the committee meeting agenda for Wednesday, the 21st. Ms. Trimble, are there any changes to our committee meeting schedule?
No changes, short day, just 2 meetings.
Yeah, I did notice that, yeah. Short day starting at 11:30, and all of the committee schedule and documents are located on the city's website for the public. Next, we'll go to special presentations and proclamations. And this evening, we don't have any proclamations. We do have the Franklin to Fort Neighborhood Council here to provide their update. And so I would welcome you up now. Please come on up. Oops, let me turn on the mic. Hold on one second. I remembered before anybody had to remind me. I'm learning.
Hello, I'm Clint Whittle-Frazier, WHITTLE-FRAZIER from the Franklin to the Fort leadership team for our update today. The Franklin to Fort neighborhood was hit particularly hard during the intense thunderstorm in July. We wanted to thank our neighbors for coming together and helping each other out after the storm. We also appreciate Public Works and Mobility for actively removing limbs and debris in our neighborhood. It's been very nice. Also, over the past few months, we've been hearing a lot of positive comments about Neighborways, which is a group that is proposing to create a protected 6 to 8 foot wide corridor along existing street pavement that would serve as an alternative to sidewalks on certain streets. Recently, we also attended listening sessions from residents who have concerns about the project, and we want to continue being a part of these sessions to make sure all perspectives are heard. And lastly, we are excited to invite you to our 3rd annual Franklin to the Fort Block Party, which will be held on Wednesday, September 4th from 5:30 to 8 p.m. at Franklin Park. We will have a DJ, food trucks, ice cream, kids activities, and more. We have collaborated with Franklin to the Fort Neighbors in Action, a local group of folks who work to better the neighborhood, to put on this event. Thanks.
Mr. Frazier, you have a hyphenated name. I want to make sure I have that right. Would you say it one more time?
Yeah, it's Whittle-Frazier.
Whittle-Frazier. Thank you. And I know I've asked this before. Thank you, Mr. Whittle-Frazier. I appreciate that. Thank you. Franklin to Fort is my neighborhood as well. And we did get hit pretty darn hard. I have to say, coming home from work the other night, Public Works was out in front of my house picking up a massive amount of tree debris. Unexpectedly, they were moving through in a grid fashion, and my neighbor had rented a very large boom truck and some equipment to get rid of a lot of tree damage on their personal property, and had Public Works happened to cruise through, see that it was all out there, and they were able to get it picked up in the same night. It was pretty cool. We had about 6 or 7 of us out there and helping pick up, debris and get it all loaded, and it was a really great coming together from neighbors. So thank you for pointing that out. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Whittle Frazier or comments? Yes, yeah, Councilor Vasecka.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to thank you for your leadership. Those block parties are always super fun, so I look forward to seeing everyone there.
Thanks.
I echo that. Thank you very much, and thank you for participating with your leadership team and city government. Appreciate that. All right. Okay, that takes care of item number 4. We'll move on to our public hearings this evening. So we have a whole host of public hearings, and they are all associated with the city budget. We will move forward with hearing each element of the city budget as far as presented. I want to mention for the public that this is a public hearing that's been open since the 5th of August. I want to appreciate the amount of time and energy the council has given, both with our council meetings as well as the committee meetings. We've had many hours of proposed amendments and discussion, and I just want to call up the council rules here, so I'm making sure I'm following what I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and just give a quick summary of the budget as it stands today and the executive budget, some rationale behind that. And so Mr. Hallstrom is going to go ahead and control the slideshow. Thank you very much. All right. So as your new mayor, this is my first budget. If you'll move to the next slide, please. And I just wanted to give a bit of a recap here on the budget approach that I took this year. For many of you, and certainly council members here, the budget has been an ongoing and is an ongoing challenge for the city of Missoula, where, I know we'll talk more about this, but we more or less have a limiting factor with the way our primary revenue source, property taxes, are actually limited to 1/2 of inflation. So what I asked for this year was shifting to a priority-based budget where we asked the staff to really dig deep and shifting to a culture of budget management. This was not going to be resolved within one budget year. The way we like to think about this is that this is a big organization, and it's like an airplane, landing an airplane. And if we drop that thing to the ground quickly, we're going to have damage. We're going to potentially hurt people. If we can lower this thing carefully, we can land a plane and do so in a way that is thoughtful and makes the necessary changes to get out in front of the concerns that constituents have around an ever-growing property tax burden on residents. So shifting to a culture of budget management, by no means do I mean to say that the city was not managing their budget before. I placed a high emphasis on taking a look at every program in every department. We started by doing program inventories of every different program in every department. Those are one-page documents. They are public information. Those are located on our city budget website. So I asked departments at the beginning of this process to dig deep and identify $1 million in savings across the city. We're just starting here to see what this would result and what it would look like. Again, can we land this plane in a way that doesn't do a lot of damage? And we did achieve this. We did this, much of those budget savings were related to the shift in our workman's comp vendor, and then you'll see later another $500,000 across all departments, so actually over $1 million in savings we were able to find. Much of the budget increases, I will say that we were seeking savings in the budget knowing that we had budget increases, and much of those are related to our ongoing commitments in terms of staff wages and other contracts that we have. We just know those costs are going to go up. And we have 14 different unions that we negotiate and maintain good relationships with, and we can project what our increases will be. Much of that increase is an increase in wages for our public safety officers. This is ensuring that we pay a competitive wage for our public safety officers, and I'm really proud to say that we're getting there. And this is the first year of this budget approach. We are utilizing program inventories to inform our decisions, and I think we made really good progress, and we'll continue these efforts into future years. Next slide, please. This is a recap of some of the information I presented on August 5th. And just to further emphasize that inflation and priorities still outpace new revenue for the city. And so this does create a persistent structural imbalance every year. And it will require ongoing service level evaluation and assessment of new revenue tools. Some of the things that we proposed to close the structural imbalance this year, one-time sources include a remittance to the city from the Missoula Redevelopment Agency. And we are funding 2 positions and utilizing the last of our ARPA dollars. That is something that we knew going into this budget, that we were going to have a remaining balance of around $800,000. Those 2 positions are not $800,000 because we're also using part of those ARPA dollars to fund the Johnson Street temporary shelter. And so we are cognizant of that as we move forward and what those positions' responsibility is here at the city. The other one-time source that I proposed we utilize is an emergency sheltering housing levy. This came from 2023. In June of 2023, former Mayor Hess declared an emergency proclamation dealing with housing and sheltering. This was due to the large number of people sleeping unregulated in various parts of our community, causing some serious struggle for not only themselves but other residents. And it's because we did not have a secondary shelter open at that time. Johnson Street at that time was only used for winter shelter, so we didn't have a secondary shelter open. That enabled the city to utilize budget outside of its approved budget to be able to do some, and also do some quick work to be able to get the infrastructure ready to go for a more year-round use at that site, even though that facility is not meant to be a lasting shelter there. We know that eventually the uses will change in that facility. And so what this additional 2 mills does is when you declare an emergency, it allows you to basically recuperate the money that you spent through levying 2 mills. Okay, mills are how local government basically assesses its property taxes. And in this budget proposal, because I'm very cognizant of keeping our base budget as conservative as possible, because the voters did pass a fire levy this year, which is another increase on property tax payers. This emergency levy allows us to levy 2 mills, which is approximately $409,000, which is equivalent to $11 on someone's home on a $450,000 median priced home. This emergency mill, these 2 emergency mills are a one-time tax source. They're not ongoing property tax increases. And the total 5.84% budget increase that I have proposed, these emergency mills are part of that. And so whether we used a permanent tax increase to fund the budget or this one-time emergency levy, it's all part of that 5.84%. So it is not on top of that. I want to be really clear. The other thing I want to be really clear about, because this sparks some questions from folks, this is not the crisis services levy that was on the ballot in 2022. The crisis services levy that was on the ballot both in the city and the county county in 2022 was a permanent tax increase for a much wider range of services, and that was dealing with, just as an example, that was dealing with all sorts of different things with mental health and behavioral health, addiction services, and emergency sheltering. And some of the examples would be things that were funded both at the city and the county. So for example, pretrial services and other kinds of crisis services like our mobile support team, crisis intervention team, and a number of different things. That did not pass in 2022. This is a very specific tool. They're both levies, but they are two separate and entirely different levies. So just wanted to make sure that I was clear about that, because I can see how that would be confusing to the public. Let's see, I mentioned our ongoing savings already here. We have a $700,000 savings in our workers' compensation provider, and then other austerity measures across the city for $500,000. Going forward and dealing with the structural imbalance, a few ways that we'll be thinking about working on this is as soon as this budget passes, we'll be working on the FY26 budget starting this fall. And we'll be active in the 2025 legislative session for local government revenue reform. The other things that we'll have to do is we'll have to assess service levels, and we'll have to assess our continuing innovation to achieve strategic goals. The thing that I would emphasize about that, I mentioned earlier that we are using up the remainder of our federal ARPA dollars. Those dollars allowed us to try some things out. And one of those things is our mobile support team. That is, those were funded largely through the American Rescue Plan dollars. We have become, quite frankly, a model for the state. We have the Department of Health and Human Services taking a look at how best to deploy this group of social workers and other aid workers alongside first responders. And we have seen this to be such an incredible help to our first responders that it was part of our fire levy, and it was something that the voters just passed to fund permanently. Those are the kinds of things we'll be thinking about, how we have certain innovations that help bring better service to constituents moving forward. Our next slide is just a quick summary of changes to the mayor's budget since August 12th. There was one addition through a council amendment, and that is to elevate the railroad quiet zone in our capital improvement plan. There is no fiscal impact in FY25. Our capital improvement plan is basically a 5-year rolling plan of capital improvements. Anything that impacts our current budget ends up being shown in our current budget, and what it does is it prioritizes staff to work on this agenda item. I want to just say I appreciate the collaborative process that we had as mayor and council. We had a different process this year where the timing of the executive budget came after department presentations, and that allowed both council input as well as public input for me to consider in putting the executive budget together. And knowing, I think we all are very conscientious of the overall property tax increase and implications to residents. And so those two things together, I'm gonna assume is why we didn't see a lot of amendments passed, that there was input that I could consider when putting together that mayor's budget. Next slide, please. So I want to speak to the financial outlook, and this is something, again, speaking to the larger, we're passing a budget tonight, but we're always thinking about how we are handling our municipal budget going forward. And I mentioned before that we operate with restricted funding because our primary revenue source is property taxes in our general fund that is restricted to half the rate of inflation. This year, we are managing the end of our ARPA dollars, and so we're conscious of what that means going forward. And I talked about this in the original budget presentation, so I wanted to make sure I address it tonight. It's important as a city that we maintain cash reserves. We are evaluated on our strength of our bonding, and we bond for things like infrastructure, and our financial performance. Cash reserves is one of those financial performance realities. Our target at the City of Missoula is 7% of ongoing revenues, and because ongoing revenues do increase every year, that changes every year. So for FY25, 7% would be 4.9 million. This budget achieves a balance at 2 million. And that is similar to previous years. So I'm being fully transparent. I really want the public and you to know that it is a goal of mine to increase this fund reserve because it matters to me that we have a strong financial footing for the financial solvency and functioning of the city. We often find budget savings, and typically the city spends under our budget, and often those monies are then placed into our fund reserve or our cash reserve, and we're committed to continued evaluation for savings each budget year. Next slide, please. So the total budgeted expenditures this year, we have of our tax and assessment supported funds, you can see we're at 119.8 million. And this is inclusive of our general fund, our park district, our road district, the recently voter adopted fire levy, our permissive medical levy, our conservation lands levy, and then all of the debt service that the city is responsible for. The total city budget this year is 216.7 million. And the difference between those two, the bottom number is inclusive of the Missoula Redevelopment Agency, the Parking Commission, and all of our utilities, which are enterprise funds. So the water company, the stormwater company, stormwater and wastewater, for example, are our utilities included in this budget line item. This also includes all special improvement districts. So if there's a part of town that has a lighting special improvement district, that's where that lands in the budget. And then next slide, please. So, down to brass tacks, what are the tax impacts for people? The annual cost includes, again, the general fund, the road district, the park district, and the citizen voted fire levy. You can see that for the mayor's budget is a $25.50 increase on a $100,000 home value. And with the voted fire levy, that total is $71.31. When we equate this to the current median assessed home, which tax assessed home is different than market rate, and I think we all know that, but it's important to say. Currently, that value is $450,000. And so the total annual increase for a median tax assessed home is $320.88. That equates to about 80 cents a day. Again, I want to say that we were really judicious in this mayor's budget and this executive budget. You know, knowing that the voter-passed fire levy funded very important things for our community, we wanted to be very careful with what the mayor's budget added on top of that. And then next slide, please. And in sum, it really comes down to what does that 80 cents a day get us? There's a lot. Without having many slides here, I want to say that this budget focused on maintaining core services and community priorities. We created a new fire company, 20 new firefighters. We were able to address firefighter competitive wages, fire apparatus, and we'll be looking to build a 6th fire station. Paying all of our employees good wages. We believe in not only attracting, but in retaining good, high-quality employees. We brought our public safety workers up to competitive pay. And something that's important to me is leverage, and that word means how are we taking a sum of money and getting more out of it? We've leveraged $21.3 million in grant and private investment to deliver $125 million in infrastructure improvements. Those $125 million in infrastructure improvements are listed in our capital improvement plan identified for FY25. So again, I want to thank the council and members of the public that have provided input for working through this budget year, and I particularly want to thank the staff at the City of Missoula. They worked really hard to find savings and continue to do so. I mean, I know it might seem trivial, but from the moment this public hearing started, which was August 5th, the total tax increase associated with the mayor's budget was 5.96%. And then on August 12th, it was 5.84% because staff continued to find savings, and we're committed to doing that. So I just want to thank the team for working hard, and we will continue to do so and look forward to what this yields next year. And with that, I will stop talking. I talked more than I had planned. And I think what we'll do now is we will go ahead, we did this on August 5th as well. We went ahead and basically put all motions on the floor in order to have the public comment on the whole budget. Because there are, all of the motions 5.1 through 5.7 are related to the budget. And this is an opportunity for the public to speak on each one. And so because we have already opened up the public hearing, we'll do that, and then I'll ask for the motions to be made after that, if that's okay. So we'll go ahead. This is a public hearing, and members of the public are invited to come up and provide comment. Please keep those comments to 3 minutes, and please say your name and spell your last name for the transcriptionist, please. Come on up.
Hi again, I'm Clint Whittle-Frazier, WHITTLE-FRAZIER. I live in Ward 6 on Johnson Street, just a little bit above the shelter actually. And I am here just in support. I'm really happy that 5.1, the 2 emergency levies are on here, and I hope that it passes, just because having more shelter options for folks, as I know you've already discussed it, the shelter earlier today, is just really important. I did learn a fun fact about, so New York City and San Francisco have about the same amount of unsheltered folks in those cities. However, one city, San Francisco, has it way more visible there and more of a problem there because they have way less shelter beds than New York City has, that has a lot more options for people to get out of the street and access to more resources that's better for them. I didn't know that because I associate San Francisco as having an awful crisis going on. So I thought that was really cool that just having more shelter options really help people in places like New York City. So I think it's a really good positive direction to go. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Will Frazier. All right, other public comment this evening.
Good evening, my name is Chris Foster, F-O-S-T-E-R. I just wanted to come up and say I was for the funding for the Johnson Street shelter, at least for this year. I hope in the future we don't have to. Also, I'm in favor of this levy, but I think it's time to start looking to the future for. I was with regard to the homeless, how we're handling the homeless. I don't think it's just going to be sitting there like a dead weight in the future, and we're talking pretty big numbers associated with that between the shelters and everything else that we're doing, staff costs for enforcement. And I think the way we're set up right now, no one's really happy with it. It's kind of wonky. People that I talk to, I don't know what your emails are like, but people I talk to, they're not as concerned about the money aspect of this, the tax increase, as they are with the enforcement aspect of this. That's the thing that they're interested in. And I think that one way of looking at the results of last year's mayoral election was that people were not supporting business as usual as far as policies, especially with regard to that. So a lot of people at work are just now finding out that we're going to allow people to camp in the parks. And they're like, what? So I think I've been doing a lot of reading on that because I think it is time to, like, what's our long-term solution going to be for, I mean, we can't have Johnson Street there forever. So I came across this, there's this guy named Sam Simbaris, I think it is. He started a program in New York City called Housing First. And I'm sure you're aware of it. no questions asked, no strings attached. They put people in apartments. And, well, it worked. And it was cheaper. So I've been reading about Europe because Finland took this, I think it was 2016. They took it and ran with it. They just jumped in head first. And they're having great success with that. So Helsinki, a city with 1.3 million people, has one shelter with 55 beds, because that's all they need. Salvation Army converted their facilities to apartments, because that's what they do over there. It's based around apartments. So anyway, I have a copy here if you're interested, but I think that's something we should look at.
Thank you very much, Mr. Foster. And when you're ready to go to the legislature with me, let me know. You can ride with me. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Will Whittle Frazier. I suppose my comments pertain to the emergency levy for the Johnson Street shelter. My sentiments actually echo Mr. Foster's to a degree, in the sense that obviously I think we need to be looking towards the future, but my understanding is that's something we're already working on and is in discussion in the city council. So I appreciate that. I know that it may be distasteful to some to talk about having an emergency levy raised when we're grappling with our budget as it is currently. But I do believe that the loss of the Johnson Street shelter, if we were to lose it right now, would ultimately have a larger impact financially than this emergency levy. Just having all of these people consolidated into one place allows us to consolidate our own resources into one place, kind of focus more on helping those who need it and getting them the services they need, and hopefully raising them out of houselessness. So I'm just saying I'm in favor of this emergency levy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Will Frazier. All right, other public comment this evening? Seeing none in the room. How about online? Is there anybody online that wishes to provide public comment in regards to the city's FY25 budget? I'm not seeing any online. All right. Okay, that wraps up our public comment for this public hearing. And so we will go ahead and put the motion on the floor, motions on the floor.
Okay, I'm going to do them one by one. Or are we going to do them?
We are going to take each motion one by one. Thank you for the
Okay.
clarification.
Okay.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay.
And so we'll have the opportunity for council debate, question, and vote each one independently. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So the first motion I'd like to put on the floor is the emergency houseless levy. And I move to approve that the one-time use of a 2 mil emergency levy reimbursing $414,009 of the city's costs incurred in emergency sheltering activities under Emergency Proclamation Resolution number 8684 and authorizing its placement in the City of Missoula's fiscal year 2025 budget to be used to pay for the ongoing costs to address emergency sheltering in Missoula. And I would like to speak to it when the time is appropriate.
Great. Thank you, President Sherrill. And because this has been a public hearing that's been open for 2 weeks, we've had really great council dialogue. We'll move right to parliamentary debate, which means council members can ask questions or make comment or both. So I'll just start with you. How about that?
Yeah. First, I agree with many of what the public commenters have said, but I want to say that this is a one-time levy. I know that you said that, but I want to say it again. And for the budgeting priorities to work, we would either need to pass this one-time levy, or we would need to roll it into the final number of mills that we levy. So this is important. They are costs we are incurring. We are working as a body to and as a community to mitigate the effects of those living unsheltered in our community, both for them and for those living in our community that are housed. So I think this is an important thing to pass, and I hope my colleagues will vote with me.
Thank you, Councillor Sherrill. And Councillor Jordan, I saw your hand raised, and I know you were having some technical challenges with that. So before I go to you, Councillor Campbell, I'll just see if Councillor Jordan had a comment or a question.
I do appreciate that. I was going to say something and I actually lowered my hand, but thank you very much.
Okay, absolutely, you bet. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple questions, if I may.
Please.
So it's kind of off topic, but it is kind of important, I think, to mention up front here and now, since we're going through the whole budget thing. But I thought it would be necessary to point out currently that the city is in negotiation with the police department through arbitration on their salaries. Is that correct?
We are not in arbitration yet. We are in negotiation. There is a what is called a salary opener with the union currently.
Okay, I just wanted to point that out because I know that's something that's looming out there and it's a large chunk of money. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. So with respect to the 2 mills, when this was brought forth by Mayor Hess last year, I believe it was, since that time we've had an increase in the value of a mill, have we not? Maybe this is a question for Dale.
Mr. Bickle is online, and so if he is unable to answer that question, I do know that Ms. Griffin is here to do that. And Mr. Bickle, are you able to answer Campbell's question? I see he is unmuted. Working on it. Okay, great, thank you.
Can I do a mic check?
Hi, absolutely, you bet. We hear you. We hear you, Dale.
Okay. I don't know why my camera's not working quite yet, but the value of the mill increased a little bit between the FY24 budget, which was actually the reappraisal year, where there was those large increases, to this year. So we got about a 1% increase in mill value, and so but the value of the dollars in this particular motion is the value of 2 mills in this, which is the limit provided by state law. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. And follow up?
Sure.
So you had mentioned, Madam Mayor, about the alternative to this one-time houseless levy for the 2 mills, as opposed to basically a plan B, which is we just assess this as normal tax levy as part of the general fund, or?
That is correct.
And that would be an ongoing, recurring?
Correct, that would be part of our base budget. So when we increase our mill cap, it generally is considered a permanent tax increase, unless we go back through and we pull things out of the budget, but that would be considered part of our base budget moving forward. Whereas this emergency housing sheltering levy, because it's basically a very narrow use, it's a one-time levy increase.
And when you say narrow use, used only for this particular purpose with the shelter, as opposed to something going in the general fund and being used for or reallocated to?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay, I have no more questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. And then I did see Ms. Griffin had her hand raised, and I just wanted to see if there was some more information you'd like to provide? No? Okay.
No, just jumping in case Dale wasn't there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other council comments or questions? Ms. Anderson.
Thanks so much, Madam Mayor. I just want to make sure that I am understanding correctly. In the 5.84 proposed increase, it is factoring in these 2 mills.
That's correct. Thank you for asking that clarifying question. So the total 5.84% increase that I'm proposing Either we'll use these 2 mills from the one-time emergency housing shelter levy, or a one-time tax increase, or 2 mills in a permanent tax increase.
Great, thank you. So may I have a follow-up?
Absolutely, you bet.
Yeah, so I realize that this hypothetical situation is not realistic, but if if everything in our budget and our income and everything stayed exactly the same for next year, these 2 mills would come off. And so there would be a decrease if we pass the emergency levy. If we don't pass the levy, the 5.84 will continue on year after year, and we will just keep adding to it as we expand the budget if we see so fit.
Generally speaking, yes.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that's an important distinction to make. And that is the end of my questions. And I do have a comment, so I'll wait till, are we getting questions and comments?
We're doing both. Absolutely. You bet. Questions and comments. You bet. Go right ahead if you have a comment.
Okay, yes, thank you. I think that we're all in agreement that we do not take our budgeting authority lightly, and we scrutinize and have conversations and look at all aspects, because we are all taxpayers too. And the increases that we vote on don't just affect other people, they affect us as well. And and we on council represent a variety of socioeconomic circumstances and life backgrounds. And so it is not, I think, beyond any of us to really take how seriously or critical something like this has. But to me, the value in voting for this one-time levy addresses the immediate need, but also gives us the flexibility to know this need won't always be the case. And therefore, mindful of passing it one time. It's a one-time increase, and then it's not added in year over year over year. And I think we've all been around long enough to know that it's very rarely that we have an opportunity to do a big tax decrease because of the nature of how our tax system works. So therefore, having the opportunity to do it one time and then bring it back down and kind of start the process over again for next year's budget without this being in the base budget seems to me to make the most common sense. I think that, we're worried about folks living in Missoula and being able to continue to live in Missoula, recognizing that we have to find this money in our budget one way or the other, and doing it only in a one-time fashion, I think is the most fiscally responsible way to handle the current crisis that we're in. And I appreciate the fact that it's factored into the mayor's larger overall budget increase of 5.8%, along with all the other levies and whatnot. So I will be in support.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Vasecka?
Thank you. Well, I'm not very happy with this decision that I'm going to be making tonight because I need to choose between the lesser of 2 bad choices and 2 that I disagree with. This is a choice between a permanent increase or a temporary increase, which is funny because the Johnson Street shelter was supposed to be temporary. So if I vote yes on these emergency mills, it will be a one-time cost. If I vote against it, then it'll be moved to a budget line item, which could be an ongoing cost. So it seems these mills will get levied. It's up to how my voting goes on how those mills will get levied, because this vote does need to be unanimous. So like I mentioned, I've made a lot of uncomfortable choices during my tenure on council, and this is absolutely one of them. And I'm always skeptical when government says temporary or one time. But I do not want this to be never ending and coming up in future budgets, so I will be in support of it.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for clarifying, Councillor Vasecka, that an emergency levy does require a unanimous vote by those that are present this evening, those that are in attendance. Any other council questions or comments? All right, I'm not seeing any. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Councillor Campbell.
Sorry, my Zoom isn't up. I didn't see the hand. I just echo what my colleague, Councilwoman Vasecka, just said. I don't like it. But between the alternatives of this being a one-time thing, with a specific purpose in mind, used in a specific way, as opposed to as a general tax increase being forced down our throats to be used for whatever may come along, heaven knows. I'm going to choose the former, so with that in mind, I'll be voting, holding my nose for the 2 mil emergency levy. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Campbell. Any others before we take a roll call vote on this? All right, okay, not seeing any of them. Ms. Trimble, I think we're ready for a roll call vote.
All right. Beginning our roll call vote on the emergency houseless levy, beginning with Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Carlino.
Yes.
And is Farmer present yet?
No, she is not.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Melson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
And Vasecka.
Yes.
And that passes unanimously with 11 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much, and thank you for the thorough discussion. Appreciate that very much. And then back to you, Councillor Sherrill.
Okay, thank you. 5.2 is the budget fiscal year 2025 annual appropriations and capital improvement program. I move that we accept a resolution fixing the annual appropriations and the capital improvement program for the city of Missoula as set forth in the fiscal year 2025 budget and capital improvement program, including the Park District 1 work plan and budget for fiscal year 2025, the Road District 1 work plan and budget for fiscal year 2025, the Tourism Business Improvement District work plan and budget for fiscal year 2025, the Business Improvement District work plan and budget for fiscal year 2025, the permissive medical levy, employee health insurance levy for fiscal year 2025, and the Missoula Local Government Building Special District work plan and budget for fiscal year 2025.
All right, excellent, thank you. That motion is on the floor. Public comment's been had. Any council comment or questions? All right, not seeing any here in the room or online. All right. Good, another chance here. All right, motion's ready, I think, then for a roll call vote. Ms. Trimble.
All right, voting on item 5.2, the annual appropriations and capital improvement program, beginning with Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Carlino.
No.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
No.
Melson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Vasecka.
Yes.
And Anderson.
Yes.
That's 9 in favor and 2 opposed.
All right, great, thank you. That passes, and we'll move on to item 5.3.
Okay, this is a long one. This is budget fiscal year 2025 resolutions levying assessments. I'm going to go through all the motions on this one. Is that correct?
Oh, pardon me. We have a clarifying statement or a question from Ms. Griffin.
My apologies. I have found a typo in the first resolution for the Park District assessments. They should be $10,143,222. That's 10,143,222. Thank you, and my apologies.
Okay, so, but I'll go through all of these motions, Mayor, correct, under 5.3?
I know it's rather long. We are voting on
Okay.
it, and we didn't do that when we started public comment, but I think it's probably good to say it into the record.
Oh,
Thank you.
Okay, I'm saying I'll go through all of them and then we'll vote on them individually. Is that the?
For item 5.3, that's a good question here. Now, oh, wait a minute. Tourism Business District. Nope, that's not the one. Hold on one second. We had one item.
Under 5.3, we have 3 recommended motions. One's been postponed.
Yes, thank you. I was just looking for that.
I think it would work for me to read them all and then vote on them separately, if that's okay
Yeah,
for you?
that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you for the recommendation.
Okay, great. I recommend that we adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Missoula, Montana, levying and assessing the lots and parcels within the City of Missoula Park District 1 in the amount of $10,143,222 for the costs associated with providing certain maintenance, purchasing, and improvement services in fiscal year 2025 for city-owned facilities, land, and equipment under the responsibility and care of the City of Missoula Parks and Recreation Department, providing for a method of assessments, and providing for other matters properly related thereto. I also recommend we adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Missoula, Montana, levying and assessing the lots and parcels within the City of Missoula Road District Number 1 in the amount of $10,317,007 for the costs associated with providing certain maintenance, purchasing, and improvement services for fiscal year 2025 for city-owned facilities, land, and equipment under the responsibility and care of the City of Missoula Public Works and Mobility Departments, Street Division, Cemetery and Engineering Division, Central Services, Fleet Maintenance Division, providing for a method of assessments and providing for other matters properly relating thereto. Lastly, I recommend that we adopt a resolution levying annual assessments on the hotels located in the Tourism Business Improvement District of the City of Missoula for fiscal year 2025 in the amount of $2 per occupied room night in accordance with 7-12-1132 MCA. And the final recommended motion we were postponing until August 26th, so I don't think it's necessary that I read that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we are going to go ahead and take council comment or questions on all 3 of these, but take the votes separately. So I've got folks lining up for questions. And Lee, your hand is still raised. Just want to make sure if you had another clarifying statement. No? Okay. Just making sure there. Councilor Carlino.
Yeah, I'm happy to vote for the $2 tax on the hotel rooms. I think that's a good way for us to get a little bit of tax money from people coming into Missoula rather than taxing Missoulians more. I'm not going to vote for the Park District nor the Road District tax increases. $667,000 of those dollars are going towards private security forces patrolling the streets when that money is supposed to go towards our parks and roads. Yeah, I mean, we had tiny tax increases proposed during the budget amendment towards things that were actually going to improve our roads, like traffic circles or bulb outs to help people walk and bike and drive safer. And, you know, yet we don't have money for those things. We didn't have money for sidewalks, yet our road district is paying for private security to patrol around the streets. So I think that's a total misuse of funds from our road district and our park district, and therefore I won't be voting for these tax increases to fund because of those private security funds coming out of the road and park district.
Thank you for your comments, Councilor Carlino. Councilor Campbell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Likewise, I will be in support of the Tourism Business Improvement District levy. I, however, will also be voting against the Park District and Road District assessments, and just out of principle of the nature of the special district assessments. I mean, these started in 2010 as a sum of roughly $500,000, and since then, they've been used unabashed to a tune of 2,000% in increase since that time. And, this is something that was set up, without a righteous vote of the people, quite frankly. The tax-paying public, it's something that the city's been relying more and more upon over the years to make ends meet with the budget. And there's no accountability to it other than city council ourselves. There's nothing to stop the city in the future from identifying other needs and creating other special districts that I won't mention this time, but there are other venues and other avenues that we could go down besides roads and parks for special districts. And I don't like the way the system's set up. I think it's something the legislature hopefully will address this time around. So for those reasons, I will be voting no on the Parks and Road District, but I will be in support of the TBID.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Mayor. Along with the comments from my colleague, Mr. Carlino, I also will not be voting for the parks and the public works budget. I will definitely vote for the hotel tax when it comes forward, but between the two public works and parks budgets, I just have concerns that I've had every year, and that I don't feel like I personally have all the information I need to make a decision like this. I had a couple of neighbors knock on my door today to tell me that they absolutely cannot afford tax increases. And I know, Mayor, that you're moving toward doing program metrics and whatnot, and I greatly appreciate that. And I appreciate the focus on priority-based budgeting. I really think that you did some smart moves in there. I still really cannot figure out how to properly decide on how money should be spent when I don't know how all of our programs are doing. I want to see program metrics, and I want to be able to cut programs or add money to programs based on how they're actually performing rather than as a bulk project. And so I will be voting no on these two tonight until we can kind of refine the budget process a little bit more in the future.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Jordan. Any other comments or questions from council members tonight on this agenda item? I don't see any. All right. Then I believe we can do a roll call vote on each of these motions. Ms. Trimble.
Right, roll call vote on the items under 5.3, beginning with Park District number 1. Campbell.
No.
Carlino.
No.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
No.
Melson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Vasecka.
No.
Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
That's 7 in favor and 4 opposed.
All right, thank you very much. And this is just a, bit of a public piece of information. I just wanted to clarify, in particular for the members of the public, that any new districts that get created by the city can only be done through resolution by city council that allows for a protest provision or by a ballot of the voters. So just want to be clear for folks that that's how districts get created. All right, we are ready for the next recommended motion under 5.3, Ms. Trimble. Another roll call vote, please.
Right, the next motion is the resolution to adopt the road district number 1, beginning with Carlino.
No.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
No.
Melson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Vasecka,
No.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
and Campbell.
No.
And that's 7 in favor and 4 opposed.
All right. Thank you. We'll now move on to the last recommended motion under 5.3, please, for a roll call vote.
All right, our final motion this evening is regarding the Tourism Business Improvement District and the hotel, $2 a night per occupied room. Beginning with Jones.
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Melson,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Vasecka,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
and Carlino.
Yes.
And that passes with 11 in favor and none opposed.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Trimble. And for the record, want to note that Councillor Farmer is in attendance and with us. Perfect timing. We're moving on to the next agenda items. All right. And if we'll do the same here with read them all together and then we'll take votes separately.
Perfect, thank you. This is 5.4 budget fiscal year 2025 resolutions adopting fees. I recommend that we adopt a resolution of the Missoula City Council increasing fees by 5% for the Parks and Recreation Master Fee Schedule effective January 1st, 2025. I also recommend we adopt a resolution of the Missoula City Council increasing fees by 7% for the Public Works Fee Schedule effective January 1st, 2025. And lastly, I recommend we adopt a resolution of the Missoula City Council increasing business licensing, land use, and planning and engineering fees by 7% for the following services effective January 1st, 2025.
All right, great. Motions are all on the floor, and we'll start with council comments or questions. Councilor Carlino.
I'm going to be voting against these fee increases. It just seems like never-ending fee increases. Just in my time on council, I've seen certain sports go up over 50% already in just the past few years. And while we do have a good scholarship program, I'm glad we kept funding for that and we're building off of that. I just think the never-ending fee increases are affecting building and camps and sports. And I think we should try and keep these things affordable or at least have a plan to level them out in the future, but never-ending increases just doesn't seem sustainable to me.
Thanks for your comments, Councilor Carlino. Are there any other council questions or comments? Yes, Councilor Vasecka and then Councilor Jones after.
I just have to agree with my colleague, Mr. Carlino, and it is a good thing that we have a good scholarship program because more people will probably have to use it. So I'm not going to be in support of this.
Thank you for your comments. Councilor Jones.
Sure, I just want to say that it is frustrating to have to vote on fee increases every year, but the reality is to run all of these programs, to maintain all of our parks, we have to employ staff and we have to offer enough wages in order to hire folks. We have actually had to cut back on some of our programming because we couldn't hire enough people, we couldn't hire enough lifeguards and other programs. So that's just the economic reality. And if we want to supplement this more from the general fund, then we're going to be raising those taxes and everyone in town will be paying to supplement this, or we try and do it, balance it through our user fees as best as possible so that those folks pay for the service that they are getting. And then we have the scholarship fund for families that can't afford it. So it may seem challenging to have to do this every year, but that's the reality of sitting in this seat and making the budget work. So I'm happy to vote yes for it.
Thank you for your comments, Councilor Jones. And Councilor Anderson.
Thanks so much, Madam Mayor, and echo a lot of what Ms. Joan said, and I think that we've heard over and over from the presentations, especially from parks, that they are incredibly mindful of the fact that, you know, what is that needle to be thread between making sure that it's accessible to all those who want to partake, but yet and not burdensome financially, while also understanding that many of the things that are associated with the cost increasing are outside of our control. Fertilizer, just raw materials in which to do things, chemicals for pools. And also, I think that pointing out the part of that we have made a commitment as a city to try to pay a decent wage, because that is the part that we can control. So I'm frustrated because it's like, there are so many folks who, you know, on one level want to provide more and have things cost more, but then, you know, we get to the situation where Donna and the staff have over time researched what's the best methodology, and small incremental increases consistently over time versus no increase, no increase, no increase. Big increase is more sustainable for budgeting and more easy for folks to kind of absorb a little bit. I mean, yes, would I love for us to be able to provide all of these amazing amenities with zero cost? Yes, but we do not live in that reality. And so the reality that we're in, we have to make these hard decisions, like incrementally increasing small bits over time. And so because I think we have a very strong support of our parks and the programming that they provide, and the fact that we are trying to make sure it's mainly on the user and not just the general public, that is why I'll be supporting these increases.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Anderson and Councillor Jordan.
Thank you. Yeah, I will be voting no on the increased user fees. I think that user fees kind of remind me of the argument that I've heard from some folks who say, you know, I don't have kids in school, so why should I vote for the school budget? Or I don't use the library, so why should I vote for the library? I do think that finding a way to put these costs into our general fund does provide more of an equal balance on taxpayers, that we all are committed to a community that benefits everyone here, instead of picking and choosing what we want certain people to pay for. I think it's been a pretty disappointing conversation when I've heard folks say those things, that they aren't voting for libraries or schools or specific things because they don't use them. I think that that is not a community mindset, and it's not how you build a community. So like I said, I will be voting no on this for that reason. I think we need to figure out how to get this into our general fund so that everybody pays for all of the services that we know make Missoula a really great place to live.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan and Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will not be in support of any of these fee increases either, and it's a cautionary tale of every time the city decides to get involved with enterprise activities that we have no business getting involved with. And we have Marshall Mountain coming up. We just allocated $160,000 annually for the administration and maintenance of that, and I can imagine what fees are going to come down the line on that. So
thank you for your comments, Councillor Campbell and Councillor Nugent.
Quick question for Councillor Campbell. Councillor Campbell, are you saying that you don't think that the city should own a pool? Is that what you mean by getting involved in enterprise funds? I mean, that seems like what you're getting at.
I'm saying, in hindsight, I think the city could have done a better job realizing that we were going to get to points like we're getting to tonight with fee increases and maintenance increases and staffing increases. And, you know, we had amendment after amendment to, you know, mitigate some of those concerns with staffing, with aquatics, with, you know, what have you. And I'm saying we're at the point tonight because, you know, at the very least, maybe going forward, we decide that, you know, as an enterprise venture the city wants to get involved with, be it hotels or what have you, that maybe we should stop and think of what the long-term ramifications are going to be for the costs on that, for fee increases, for maintenance, for upkeep, for the personnel we're going to have to hire to monitor those various business ventures. So, yes.
Anything else, Councillor Nugent? Follow-up question?
Just a quick follow-up. I mean, you understand that in the private sector, when our costs go up, our fees go up as well. So I'm confused why you're using that stance to vote against us raising fees on users.
Private sector does that, strictly private sector money. There's been plenty of public money that's gone into these facilities. I think you'd have to agree. Splash, Currents, I could go down now Marshall Mountain, and the public monies are going to be involved with that, or it alluded to the $160,000 just as a baseline for Marshall Mountain going forward. And so it's, I think it's easier as a public official to have the discussions of spending other people's money on ventures for enterprises that, we could debate, to the extent that we should take part of, we shouldn't take part of. But on the private side of things, it's private money, it's a private venture, and, if they take a hit on that, it's on that company, it's on them. Private companies don't have the luxury like we all do here tonight, and are exercising this tonight, by the way, of going to the public and asking for money to keep these business ventures afloat. So I guess it's just a philosophical difference in that regard.
Quick comment.
Sure.
Appreciate that, Mr. Campbell, and as always, good to have back and forth. I would point out that most of the things in the user fees that we are addressing, especially in Parks and Rec, were voter approved. The aquatics, both our pools, were voter approved. Fort Missoula, those fees, that whole thing was voter approved. The open space one was voter approved. So I recognize what you're saying, but I see this a little bit differently. I see, especially in Parks and Rec, us as a council trying to be responsible and sharing that cost with the current users on something voters directed us to do. And I think that that's worth pointing out. But I appreciate your stance.
All right, thank you, Councillor Nugent. Are there other council comments or questions? All right, not seeing any, then I believe we can go ahead with a roll call vote, Ms. Trimble, on this first item. First motion under 5.4.
Yes. Apologies. Getting the vote. Beginning the votes on 5.4, beginning with the 5% increase for the Parks and Recreation Master Fee Schedule. Beginning with Farmer.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
No.
Melson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Vasecka.
No.
Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell.
No.
And Carlino.
No.
That's 8 in favor and 4 opposed.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to the next recommended motion.
The next motion?
Yes, and I'm sorry, Ms. Trimble, we should offer, before we take a roll call vote, we need to see if we have any council questions or comments on this recommended motion. Again, this is to adopt a resolution for the Missoula City Council increasing fees by 7% for the Public Works fee schedule, effective January 1st, 2025. Any council comments, questions? Not seeing any in the room or online, then we are ready for a roll call vote.
Right. Let's vote on the Public Works fee schedule, beginning with Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
No.
Melson.
Yes.
Nugent.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Vasecka.
No.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Campbell,
No.
Carlino,
No.
and Farmer.
Yes.
That is also 8 in favor and 4 opposed.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Trimble. And now the last recommended motion under 5.4, please.
Okay, voting on the business licensing, land use and planning, and engineering fee increase. Beginning with Jordan.
No.
Melson,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Vasecka,
No.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Campbell,
No.
Carlino,
No.
Farmer,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
And that is also 8 in favor and 4 opposed.
Okay, thank you. That wraps up item 5.4. And now moving on to 5.5, Budget FY 2025, Street Maintenance District Number 1.
Thanks. I recommend that we approve a resolution levying a special assessment and tax on the lots and pieces and parcels of land situated within Street Maintenance District Number 1 of the City of Missoula, Montana, in the amount of $143,899.82 for the purposes of defraying the cost of street sweeping and removing garbage and recycling from streets and avenues in the district during fiscal year 2025.
All right, thank you. Motion's on the floor, and we'll open it up to council questions or comments. Not seeing any here in the room. How about online? None online either? All right. No questions or comments from council? Then, Ms. Trimble, we're ready for a roll call vote on this motion.
Right. Roll call vote on item 5.5, the Street Maintenance District Number 1, beginning with Melson,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Vasecka,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Farmer,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
and Jordan.
Yes.
I believe that was 12 in favor, none opposed.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Now moving on to item 5.6.
Okay, this is budget fiscal year 2025 Street Lighting Improvement District. I recommend that we approve a resolution of the Missoula City Council levying and assessing a special assessment and tax on the lots, pieces, and parcels of land situated within all special lighting districts of the City of Missoula, Montana, in the amount of $322,876.39 to defray the cost of street lighting and special lighting districts during the fiscal year 2025.
Excellent, thank you. Motion's on the floor and open to council comments or questions. I'm not seeing any here and not seeing any online. All right, then we can move to a roll call vote. Ms. Trimble.
Voting on item 5.6, the Street Lighting Improvement Districts, beginning with Nugent,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Vasecka,
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Becerra?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Carlino?
Yes.
Farmer?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
And Melson?
Yes.
I have 12 in favor, none opposed.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And that brings us to our last item, which is item 5.7.
Thank you. This is a budget fiscal year 2025 resolution levying taxes for municipal and administrative purposes. I have a quick question before I read this. The language that I'll read is already attached to the agenda. Is that correct? I'm going to read more than's on our.
Just looking for clarification, Ms. Trimble, did you upload additional finalized information? Looking over the staff over here.
We decided to make the amendment on the floor.
Okay, I'll just read the amendment. I just wasn't sure because I'm going to be reading something everyone's not able to look at, but I'll read it more slowly.
Before you start, just a quick point of clarification from Mr. Sudbury.
Yeah, just to be clear, this isn't an amendment. This is just the final budget. The budget resolution is attached to the agenda. It just has blanks listed where the mill amounts that Councilor Sherrill will be reading in. So people can see what was uploaded, but we had to wait until everything passed to get the final numbers. So, and Councilor Sherrill will read those in now. So it's in sort of draft form on the agenda, but it's going to be read out in final form here.
Okay.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. That's kind of what I was looking for, and I'm sorry if I said it was an amendment. I didn't mean that. Okay, so I recommend that we adopt a resolution levying taxes for municipal and administrative purposes for the fiscal year 2025 as follows. All-purpose general fund levy will levy be established at 157.98 mils. Employee health insurance levy outside levy cap be established at 42.04 mils. 2013 GEO refunding bond levy be established at 2.22 mils. Conservation lands maintenance levy be established at 4 mils. Fire levy to be established at 34 mils. Emergency levy to be established at 2 mils. Total levy for the city of Missoula, Montana, 242.24 mils.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Motion is on the floor, and we are ready for council comments or questions. I'm not seeing any in the room here. And, I'm sorry, Councilor Jones.
I'm always trying to raise my hand. And anyway, got it. So I just held off on my comments until this last item, but I think it really applies to all of the motions that we've made tonight and passed. I am repeating myself year after year because we have the same budget conversations, and I say the same thing every year when we pass our budget, which is structurally, our property taxes have changed greatly over the last 10 to 20 years, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in. And other cities in Montana are feeling it. Our economy has changed, industries have changed, the legislature has passed laws changing the fact that certain entities put a lot less into the city revenue and local government revenue and MCPS revenue via property taxes because laws have changed what those entities pay into, and the burden has shifted onto residential and commercial property tax payers. It's being felt across the state. It's in other cities across Montana. That's why the governor set up a property tax task force, because there's a big issue in Montana in that our property taxes are not working anymore to fund local government and local schools. We have a big problem, and I think it's going to take I don't know, 2, 4, 6 years before finally it gets addressed. But until then, every year it gets harder and harder to make all of these systems function in our local governments and our schools. Every city in Montana uses districts. So the fact that we have a park and roads district is certainly not an outlier. In fact, we use our districts a lot less than many other cities in Montana. So when people complain about, oh my gosh, we've expanded our districts, we do that because it's the only way to make the wheels turn on our engine. And people expect fire to come within a certain time. People expect police to show up. They want their parks maintained. This is the only way to make it work. So these are uncomfortable budgets to sit through, and I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, this is your first budget. It's hard. This is really hard, and it gets harder every year. It's super frustrating because we need to have tax reform so that there's some thoughtful analysis of what our current industries are in Montana and how there can be an equitable assessment of taxes. But we're working with an old system that's based on a prior natural resources economy. It doesn't look at tourism for income. So here we are. We're hitting up residential property taxes and commercial property taxes. That is our source of revenue, and we have to make it work. And finally, I would just say there's so many different, this is a complicated topic I could talk about a lot, but I think it's also important to recognize that more and more responsibilities have been placed on local governments. The federal and state monies coming into our coffers are less, yet we are having to deal with housing and affordable housing, unsheltered folks, mental health. 20, 30 years ago, this was never on local government's plate. But now this is considered one of our responsibilities, yet our tools to address it haven't changed. So every year it gets harder, it gets more stressful. But I vote for this budget because this is how we keep our city running and working for all of us, painful as it is. So my hope is that I think now tax reform is frankly a phrase that is resonating across our state. Everybody's talking about it, and I know that Republicans, Democrats, everybody's starting to queue up ideas. So I think finally we've gotten over the hump of acknowledging that we have a structural issue with our property taxation laws, and we need to deal with that. So I hope that happens eventually. In the meantime, I vote yes on this budget, and thank you to staff and all of the administration that have worked so hard to make this work.
Thank you for your comments, Councilor Jones. I appreciate that. Councilor Vasecka.
Thank you. Following up on what Ms. Jones said when we talked earlier, I do not envy you right now. I do have to say that I am happy with what the mayor has found in cuts. And from our many conversations, I do feel like she does take my concerns for the taxpayer seriously. And so thank you for that. And I do think it's important to note that the additional 11% increase is due to the fire levy. That was a decision made by the voters themselves. A big factor in my decision tonight includes that the average annual grocery bill in Montana has increased by approximately 6.4% from last year to this year. So any increase in property taxes is an additional burden to our neighbors. Had my colleagues passed even one of the proposed budget amendments to reduce spending, I most likely would have been in support of this overall budget. However, since they did not, I cannot in good conscience lend my support. I anticipate some criticism of my vote against this budget, given that it is only a 5.84% increase compared to other more drastic years, and an argument could be made that I will never be satisfied with any budget that has increases over keeping up with the rate of inflation. However, it is my prerogative to vote according to my convictions, and I am in the position to do so, so I will not be in support of this budget.
Thank you for your comments, Councilor Vasecka. And Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor, and congratulations on very nearly getting the first year's FY25 budget. So obviously, yeah, I do believe that Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians across the board, I think there's acknowledgement that there is an issue with the status quo at the state level and needs to be addressed. And I'm thankful that the governor put together this task force. I'm thankful they had local representation on that task force. And, you know, I hope things come out of there to put the system in a more equitable framing in terms of burden on residential property versus commercial property versus utilities, or what have you. At the end of the day, I have two issues that ruminate in my mind. First of all is the idea of, the essential services that, we're obligated to provide. And it's interesting that phrase came up today in an article I saw from a local county commissioner in a local news outlet, railing against, the task force that Governor Gianforte took part in, at least threw some cold water on it, I guess probably a better way of putting it. I'm hopeful some good comes from it, but, he had mentioned in his article about essential services and just kind of talked a lot about, the corporate versus residential property taxes, talked about, prior things that are brought up in the prior legislative session that didn't get passed, even though it was recommended by the Department of Revenue. Be that as it may, not much attention was given to the phraseology used about essential services. I think that's an important discussion to have. I mean, what is essential in local government? And, it goes back to, what I've said in the past of, planning our needs or necessities over our wants. And I think there's still some of that discussion to be had. During the amendment process this go around last Wednesday, if you tuned in, and earlier today, there are various amendments that are brought up by myself and my colleagues. I brought up a good number of them, but altogether, just doing quick math on a sheet of paper here, there are approximately $2.5 million worth of cuts that were proposed in this year's fiscal year budget, and not one of them passed. Not a one passed. And I think that's something to give consideration to, something to think about. It's something, if I'm a member of the public, I'm going to be thinking about going forward when we get our tax bills come in January. There's a lot of people in town here going to have really tough decisions. I've heard it last year. Door knocking, there's folks in town here that, they have a pension from the 70s or the 80s. They have Social Security, that's all they have. In some cases, they own their home outright, and the only thing they're paying now is their property taxes, and their property tax bill divvied out over 12 months is a higher payment to make than what their original mortgage was when they paid off their home. I think, although, good steps were taken to try to mitigate the amount of percentage between, the city budget and the county budget together in terms of a tax increase. The fact of the matter is, given a city this size, it is going to add to our houseless population. This will kick people out of their homes. People own their homes now. Some of them are going to lose their homes as a result of this vote tonight in the affirmative. Some people in town here are going to receive eviction notices because of property tax increases that can't be sustained by the landowners, and people are going to be kicked out of their apartments, going to be kicked out of whatever means they have, and it's just going to add to the problem we have with the houselessness here in Missoula and the shelter situation that we talked about earlier tonight. So yeah, all that being said, I cannot in good conscience vote for this particular budget, given the opportunities we had at meaningful cuts, given what it's going to mean to working families, retirees, older folks in town here that are on Social Security, that have only pensions to live on, and what that's going to do to those folks, not for them. Not going to do anything for them. It's going to do something to them tonight. So that's why I keep in mind as I vote no. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Campbell. And Councillor Carlino.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate the priority-based budgeting, and I think there's a lot of good stuff in this budget, and I think some good cuts were made as well. But I think we need to have multiple branches of government working on the budget, and frankly, I think that as a legislative branch, we didn't quite get the job done. Only 5 members of the City Council voted yes on any budget amendments, which made it impossible to pass any budget amendments when only 5 members were willing to vote yes on any. The rest of the council not only didn't vote for any budget amendments, not even one, they also didn't introduce any budget amendments. So there were 0 budget amendments passed. And that means the legislative branch, frankly, just didn't fulfill our duties. People in Missoula get to elect us to help decide how the tax money is spent, and we didn't do our job when it came to this session by having the majority not vote for a single budget amendment and not introduce any budget amendments. Therefore, we passed 0 budget amendments. And what were the reasons to vote against things like the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, sidewalks, sustainable building incentive program, traffic circles, et cetera? Well, tax increases was a lot of the justification, but it turns out we still increased taxes $321 on the median home. But when tax increases came up, for a few quarters to help us, build more traffic circles or to build more sidewalks, suddenly the majority of council was concerned about taxes for those few quarters to build sidewalks or things like that. But then we're voting for this. So I'm just completely confused about what this council stands for. And I would like to see, more people, participating in this process, but I'm not surprised after the last few years of budget sessions and the fact that no budget amendments were made. People will come to comment to us about the budget, and then if we're not gonna do our job to amend the budget, they kind of feel like they're just talking to a blank wall here. So I just think a lot of our constituents have a lot of budget amendments that they emailed us. I see dozens of emails with suggestions, and I'm just wishing that we took up some of our suggestions from people in Missoula who gave us a lot of the ideas. So I just can't in good conscience vote for these tax increases in this budget when the legislative branch didn't, do due process here and look at the budget and find things to cut and things to add and work for our constituents in that way. So I'm not going to be voting for this tax increase nor the the budget that goes along with it.
Great, thank you for your comments, Councillor Carlino and Councillor Sherrill.
Yeah, thanks. I wasn't going to comment on the budget tonight, but now because I have been running budget and finance and I have made a number of comments along the way. I disagree with my colleagues, Mr. Carlino, saying that if you don't make amendments to a budget, then you're not doing your job as a legislative branch. We have a new process that we went through this year, as the mayor articulated. We had department heads come in and give us very robust presentations on their department's budget. We were then sent a form that we were allowed to see what the mayor's and the department's priorities would be and in those departments, and we were allowed to give feedback to the mayor in that way. So if you didn't agree with the priorities as they were set out and you didn't send that feedback of wanting to change the priorities, I would agree with my colleague, Mr. Carlino, that you didn't do your job as a legislator. If you did agree with those priorities and you didn't need to send that back, but you thought about it and you reviewed it, then you did your job as a legislator. I agree with the new process because we were allowed to send that back to the mayor. The mayor was allowed to have time in her first budget to thoughtfully consider the feedback that we gave them, that gave her department and her. I think it made for less amendments passing. I think you're absolutely right. You said that in your opening comments, and I had actually made a little notation of that on sloppily on my paper. I think that's true. I think that's why less amendments passed. But then we had a process for these amendments. We saw them and we discussed them at length. We had a meeting that was scheduled for, it said 2 hours, but up to 3 hours this afternoon, so before this, so we could all thoughtfully consider it and discuss the amendments that were brought forward. If anyone is wondering if we did our job as legislators, I would suggest you not only watch that meeting from this afternoon, but you go back to last week and you watch that meeting. And you also watch the many, many budget meetings that we have had and the many presentation that we have had. And I would ask when you watch those meetings that you pay special attention to the questions that are being asked and who are asking those questions of the department. I think that will be kind of illuminating as to who is doing their job and how jobs are being done on this council. You know, this, I don't envy you. I really don't envy this position. I don't envy myself for sitting here, because I do think it is, it's really hard to spend other people's money. And it's really hard to weigh what you think need to be priorities in a budget. And it's hard to make cuts. So this is a complicated budget. I ran a nonprofit and ran a nonprofit's budget and thought I knew a lot about budgeting coming out of that. and I know you did as well, Mayor. And I didn't know anything about budgeting. I have been learning on the job for these 5 years. I appreciate that the mayor has put so much thought into it. I appreciate the new process, and I'm proud to be about to vote for this budget.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor and President Sherrill. I appreciate that. And is there any other councillor comments or questions before we take a roll call vote? Councillor Nugent.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Couple things. I appreciate everybody's comments around the horseshoe. Councilman Campbell, Councilwoman Vasecka, I actually want to just say I appreciate both of you and your explanation of your vote, and that you offered amendments to cut taxes, and it just didn't happen on the floor, and so you're voting against it. I think you're standing up for what you told your constituents you'd do, and I think that those no votes are principled, and I would just say good for both of you. Mayor Davis, I think that your shift to working more towards priority-based budgeting is the right direction. And obviously, I mean, you and I have talked about this for a while, but you know, structural changes are larger than what we can do on the floor. And I think that that's also a process that takes more than one cycle. And I think that you've laid the groundwork to make some changes, because I think we all know that unless something changes in our tax structure at the state level, we're probably gonna have to do some things that nobody wants to do, because it goes back to some of the things that people in council were advocating for on services we provide people, and not wanting to charge people for things, and you know, giving people the opportunity in Missoula to be involved no matter their economic level. And I think that's going to be tough, but I think that, you know, depending on how this legislative session goes, I think we all know we're going to have another tough budget year next year. I do want to point out that on a $450,000 home, this budget raises taxes $50 less than the city of Kalispell, which voted on theirs today as well. So I think that that is worth pointing out. That includes the fire levy that was passed by the voters, which is the vast majority of this increase. And I think that that's important, because we often hear that Missoula is different than everybody else. And I think communities around the state are struggling with this, both big and small. I do have to laugh a little bit on the focus on the amendments not passing, but I think Councilwoman Sherrill did a good job of explaining the budget process starts well before the budget. And, you know, I already kind of said this, but you and I have been talking about the budget for a while now, so you know my thoughts, and you'll continue to know them. And I think that that's part of being a good council member, is communicating with each other and saying, you know, these are important to me, but also I think some of the public doesn't understand that part of the role on council is to keep things out of the budget. And there are a lot of asks, and everybody around this horseshoe knows that there's some big ones out there that our departments would like to see, that, you know, we've kind of communicated, like, I don't think this is time for this, and that doesn't end up in the budget. And that's a huge part of the process as well. So even beyond what Councilwoman Sherrill explained on participating in the priorities and making sure the mayor and the staff know kind of where we're standing, I think that that's important too. And, you know, with that, I understand where everybody's frustrations are on this, and I will support this budget, because, you know, government has to function. And at the end of all of that, at the end of everybody giving feedback to the mayor, or the mayor presenting a budget, amendments being offered, and part of doing our job is voting yes and no on amendments. You know, we still have to run government, and we still need to pay our workers. We still need to make sure that they have competitive salaries, that they have health care, that we need to support our police, our fire, our public health, our parks, you know, and our streets, our maintenance department. And that doesn't happen unless enough of us vote for the budget. And that is what we're doing. That's what the majority of us are going to do here in a few minutes. And, you know, like I said, I appreciate the comments from a few of my council colleagues for explaining what their no votes are and being able to back up those no votes with constructive, I think, contributions to this conversation. And, you know, for everybody else, I think it's easy to sit there while other people make sure that the programs we support as a community get funded and get done. And I thank you for standing up for that. And I look forward to working on the next one with you. We'll take a week off or so, and then we'll start again.
Yeah. Thank you for your comments, Councillor Nugent. Really appreciate those. And any others that are wishing to comment before we wrap it up here? All right. I'll save my comments to this after we take a roll call vote. Ms. Trimble, we're ready.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor. I was having a hard time trying to get, my internet froze because where I am is having a huge thunder and lightning storm, so I froze for a second. So I would love to comment if still a time.
Absolutely, you bet. I'm glad you were able to. Sorry about that. Please be safe and go right ahead.
Oh, no. Yes, thank you. Well, thanks so much for my colleagues for their time and comments on the budget. I think a couple of things, I'm not going to reiterate what Ms. Jones has said in regards to, you know, the frustration that her and I and many others on council have about our overall tax situation here in the state of Montana. Believe you me when I say we're just as tired of saying it as you are hearing it, but it nonetheless is the reality in the situation we live in. And I think that the mayor, given her opening comments, sort of touched on an important point that I want to reiterate, is that the FY 2026 budget starts pretty much immediately. And for those of us who've been on council and have done the hard work to make relationships with departments and staff and the mayor's office, you know, we are in those conversations, you know, well before it gets to the council floor and you know, before the budget and the community as a whole. For example, my number one priority this year was to make sure that we were doing something to address the needs of our first responders, especially our firefighters. They, year after year after year, kept coming to us and saying the same thing. Our calls are increasing and our staff is not, and we're getting to a tipping point where there will be a time where we are not able to answer the call in the time it takes to save a life. And talking about base priorities as city council, to me, that is, you know, health and safety is the number one. And so after many conversations with Dale and other folks, you know, the best way to address that was coming forth with a levy. And, you know, the folks of Missoula listened to the request and responded accordingly, saying, yes, we agree. So therefore, you know, it is reflected in this budget, and it is the biggest increase. But I think that we did a good job of demonstrating the need, the reason why, and what this money was going towards. So I didn't need to bring a budget amendment about it. So because my number one priority was taken care of. And I think that there is a misnomer that because you didn't support or you didn't vote for a budget amendment, it means you weren't doing your work. I really take offense to that, because of all the amendments that were submitted, only one council member reached out to me to ask me if I had questions on their amendment, if they had any questions or concerns. And I appreciate my colleagues taking the time to do that. And I try to do the same when I bring forth, you know, even things as simple as, we're going to put the fire levy on the ballot. I'm going to call you and tell you that we're hearing that in committee. So I think that, you know, building the relationships and doing the hard work is far outside what you see on council in committee meetings or on Monday nights. And, you know, I felt the need to say that on the record to set the record straight on this. And the second thing is that I think that I agree with Mr. Nugent in regards to his comments about several of the council members who have said they're not voting and gave the reason why. But at the end of the day, if we were not to pass this budget,
absolute chaos would ensue. And I am not exaggerating for the purposes of storytelling here. I have talked to Dale Bickle and said, what happens if the general fund budget doesn't pass? Well, we legally have no authority to continue to operate the city because there is no budget for it. One of the districts had passed, same thing. And so I don't think that that's a situation anybody wants, because, you know, the last thing anyone needs is more chaos in their life, especially from the local government that has such an impact in their day-to-day lives. Someone calls 911 2 days from now, they want to make sure someone shows up. And if we don't pass the budget, because we are already into FY25, we honestly don't know what we would do. And that is no way to run the railroad. So yes, am I frustrated that there are about things in this budget? Of course. Could there have been more things that I would like to have seen in here, things I didn't really want to fund, but I saw the necessity? Absolutely. And every single one of us has multiple examples of that. But just being able to be like, I'm not voting for the budget because you don't understand it, an amendment you didn't like didn't get passed, because you didn't do the work to reach out to your fellow council members to talk about it, does not mean that you then can sit back and vote no, and knowing the rest of us, the majority of us, will do the hard work and we'll pass this budget and we will go and have those conversations with our constituents, and we will pay those tax increases ourselves. And those who didn't pass it will be able to throw us under the bus and say, well, I didn't vote for the budget, because the alternative is chaos. And I don't think that we talk about that enough when we're making these important votes, because yes, there's principles, and I appreciate folks having those and, you know, having a strong debate and weighing out both sides. But at the end of the day, you know, we have to have a budget of the city. I think the mayor has done a very good job for a very complicated budget in her first year to try to have a good process that is transparent, that is laid out, that is logical. And this is where we ended up having to be, because, you know, there's only one way to fund the municipal government. And we are being asked to do more and more year after year. And I know that there's a difference between needs and wants. I don't want to have a shelter because there are 130 people who need to have some place to sleep tonight. But there is no good alternative to just simply throw up our hands and be like, yeah, we're not going to fund it. Where are those 130 people going to go? There is no answer for that. So therefore, I could not support that budget amendment. So I just, you know, I realize I've ranted on a little too long, but this is my 7th budget on council. And I just think that saying some of the things that we're all thinking out loud is necessary. And that is the end of my comments. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Councillor Anderson and Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I do also want to say I appreciate your focus on a priority-based budget. I think that's really a step in the right direction. I campaigned on trying to get program metrics implemented because my experience working for the federal government in another country really showed me the value of how you can use that information to make budgetary decisions. And so, as I've mentioned in previous years, I can't in good faith vote yes on a budget where I feel like I don't have enough information. And I also find it really disturbing that we are starting to add value systems or ranking comments and platforms of our colleagues. I know that in the past, Bob and Sandy have driven the rest of council absolutely nuts, but now suddenly their platform is welcomed and everybody understands where they're coming from. And I think it's a big elephant in the room that there are two of us who have had pretty strong platforms that somehow don't count for anything. I know for a fact that I represent my voters. I mentioned today that I had somebody knock on my front door and ask me what's going on with the budget. And when I told her my stance, she was really grateful and said she would vote for me again. And so I just don't think it's really necessary to go into the conversation where we're qualifying platforms. I think that's really low class, actually, because we all got on council for a really specific reason, and we all represent a certain population here in Missoula, and some of us represent more people based on our platforms, and some of us represent less people based on our platforms, but we were all democratically elected, and trying to add a value system to platforms, I think, is really low class. And I would also mention that, you don't speak for everyone, Ms. Anderson, when you mentioned that you had to say some things that everybody's thinking, because I kind of do disagree with a lot of what you said. I find it really disappointing that you're valuing what people say, but disvaluing what other people say. We all have a voice. We all have an equal platform here on City Council, and we all should have the right to come to council and vote the way we think is important, that best represents the people who voted us in. And so I think kind of passive aggressively throwing a couple of us under the bus is not a good way to move forward. I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this. I know that all of the departments are struggling. I know that we are working hard to provide competitive wages and healthcare and provide services that are really important to our voters. I do really still believe in the value of data analysis and what it can tell us, whether it's good data or bad data. And I mean bad data in that it might be telling us something we don't really want to acknowledge, but using data to drive decision making is something that's always been very important to me. And I have said year after year, and when I campaigned, that I wouldn't be able to make good budgetary decisions if I didn't have all the data. That being said, it's not a holistic hatred of what's happened and what the process has been. I think we've really improved our process in the last few years. We all remember the first year, or 3 years ago, when we tried to do all our amendments in one night, and how tired we were, and we responded to that. And I think that the new process has gone really, really well. And I think that there are plenty of opportunities for us to offer amendments and bring conversation to the council floor. That's really important, and not just approach it in that you didn't get your amendments in or your priorities in, so therefore you didn't do your job. It's just, we have different ways of doing things, and I guess I don't really understand why people are throwing other people under the bus for doing things differently. I appreciate everybody's perspective, may not agree with it, but I do honestly think that everybody on council is doing what they think is right for Missoula, but doesn't necessarily mean I agree with it. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for your hard work. I know this is a hard decision, and as I have in all years past, I will not be voting for this budget until I get and will continue to not vote for these budgets until I get the information I feel like I need. And I thank you for my time, Mayor.
Absolutely, Councilor Jordan, thank you. I appreciate everybody's comments here. Councilor Carlino, I see you have your hand up, and I did make sure everybody had an opportunity to make comments. So I don't really want to do a tit for tat, but if it's a question or if you have a change of vote and you wish to state that, please go ahead.
Yeah, just two short clarifications. One, I emailed all my budget amendments and all my referrals immediately to all council members and asked for any comments, changes, or questions. So I just wanted to clarify that after Councilwoman Anderson's comment. And then the second clarification and last clarification was just that the plan wouldn't be to not have a city budget. The plan is to have the legislative branch do our job and amend the budget until we have enough of us to agree on a budget that we can pass. So until we can get that, I'm going to withhold my vote from this budget until we actually do our job as a legislative branch. So it's not whether or not we want to have the executive budget or no budget, we just can have a different budget and still pass a budget. So nobody's suggesting that we don't pass a city budget. So I just wanted to clarify that as well.
Okay, folks, that is going to wrap up our council comments and or questions, and we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Ms. Trimble, on item 5.7, please.
All right, let's begin our roll call vote on item 5.7, beginning with Nugent.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Vasecka.
No.
Anderson. Yes. Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell.
No.
Carlino.
No.
Farmer,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan?
No.
And Melson.
Yes.
That's 8 in favor, 4 opposed.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The city of Missoula does have an adopted budget for FY25. I want to thank council for all of your thoughtful comments, and I really appreciate the feedback that you've given me along the way and here tonight about the process. I'm forever learning, and I do believe that you're all in that space too, and recognize that this is a really challenging situation we're in together. This is my first year budget, although I've been watching from afar, and I can tell you that I found the process to be quite effective, and naturally we can always unpack things and see if there's something we can improve, but I just wanted to thank everybody for your time and attention throughout this. It's been many hours that you have dedicated to this process as well. So thank you for that, and thank you for the members of public for sticking through this and this public hearing process. We are going to move on now to our next order of business. We do not have any new business this evening, and so we'll invite public comment on our consent agenda and also our committee reports, because we have no business under agenda item number 9, which is regular business. Before we ask you to come forward to provide public comment, I'll ask City Clerk Ms. Trimble to read the consent agenda for those watching online and also present it on the screen. And we are ready for you when you are ready. Ms. Trimble.
All right. Tonight's consent agenda begins with a motion to approve accounts payable or claims for checks dated August 20th, 2024 in the amount of $1,394,959.67. We have a motion to approve the purchase of a Jacobson HR 800 mower from RMT Equipment for $120,438.40. We have a motion to approve and direct the mayor to sign the Recreation Trails Program Grant Agreement from Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, totaling $100,000 for planned Mountain Drive trailhead and trail improvements. We have a motion to adopt a resolution of intent to annex and rezone to R5.4 residential the portion of the subject property as shown and legally described in Exhibits A and B, preliminarily adopt an ordinance rezoning the subject property from R8 residential, RM1-35 residential multi-dwelling to RM0.5 multi-dwelling, B2-1 community business, and R5.4 residential with the west portion of the property, including Hillview Heights overlay, to RM0.5 residential multi-dwelling, RM1-35 residential multi-dwelling, and R5.4 residential, removing Hillview Heights overlay and referring this item to the Land Use and Planning Committee for discussion on August 28th and to set a public hearing on September 9th, 2024. Our final item on the consent agenda is a motion to adopt and authorize the mayor to sign a resolution to support the intent of and project contained in the 2024 CFI grant application, which is charging and fueling infrastructure.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much, Ms. Trimble, for reading that for the record. And so, members of the public, if you have would like to provide public comment on the consent agenda or anything under regular business, which again, we have no posted items, but there are committee reports, please come on up.
Robert Dunlop, 2316 West Kent, and that's D1 LOP. Any mower that costs this much deserves a spot in the Christmas parade.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. Appreciate your comment. Any others that would wish to speak? You can comment on the consent agenda, but when we can wait to comment on anything that's not on the agenda after this. Anything else on the consent agenda or regular business in the room? Not seeing any. How about online? Can you comment on the villages? You can comment on the consent agenda, and but when we can wait to comment on anything that's not on the agenda after this. Anything else on the consent agenda or regular business in the room? Not seeing any. How about online? Can you comment on the consent agenda or regular business in the room? Not seeing any. How about online? Can you comment on the consent agenda or regular business in the room? Not seeing any. How about online? Not seeing any online either. So then we will wrap up our public comment on that agenda item. Any counselors wish to separate any agenda items? Not seeing any? Okay. Then we can go ahead and take a voice vote on the consent agenda, please, Ms. Trimble.
All right. Voting on tonight's consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. We have no items under regular business under agenda item number 9. So now we'll move on to public comment on non-agenda items. Come on up if you have any public comment this evening. Mr. Moore, you can come on up and make your public comment. I think if you weren't here at the beginning of the budget, 3 minutes are all yours. Okay. Any other public comment on non-agenda items? Any online? Okay. That wraps up our public comment on non-agenda items. Next is communications from the mayor, and I will just say thank you all again for a robust budget process. It's an absolutely amazing amount of information to learn. I look forward to continuing to bring information forward to help us learn the intricacies of this budget, and then also to always be transparent with the public. I think it only serves us better when folks understand the challenges that we have to work with in terms of managing a municipal budget, and look forward to working with you going forward to continue to provide good service for Missoulians, which at the end of the day, we are doing a great job together. And I think we always can do better, but I appreciate the service that you dedicate to the citizens here in Missoula. Thank you. So with that, I will go ahead and I'm gonna turn this over to general comments of city council members. And I'm gonna start online again this evening. Yep. Councilor Jordan, do you have any comments this evening?
Thank you. I'll pass tonight, Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. And Councilor Carlino, anything for you? Oh, I'm sorry. What? Oh, Ms. Anderson, my goodness, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay, Madam Mayor. I just want to thank everybody on the staff. I know that summertime is a hard time to have budgets because we all want to be places, but I recognize that especially folks in the finance department, Mr. Bickle, Ms. Griffin, all, do a lot of work this time of year, the clerk's office, to keep all of this straight and transparent for the public and for us on council. And so I want to acknowledge that hard work and say that we are appreciative of all of that. And then just, a general thank you to the overall Missoula city staff. We are in the business of public service, and that looks very different from plowing streets or playing with kids in parks or answering 911 calls. But, one of the things that I have always said since I've been on council is that one of the things that has always impressed me year over year is the quality of staff that the city of Missoula employs. And hopefully everyone in our community has a good story to tell about an interaction that they've had with someone who's the staff. But just want to take this moment as we adopt this year's budget that affects all of them as well as the larger community to say thank you, and I appreciate all of your work and your continued commitment to public service in big and small ways.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Very much appreciate you recognizing the staff. And boy, I couldn't agree with you more. It's an incredible group of people that work very hard and diligently across delivering service, but certainly during this budget process. It's an amazing, dedicated group of people. Thank you for that. All right, we'll come back to folks in the room. Councilor Carlino.
And I'll pass.
Okay. And Councilor Vasecka?
Thanks. I had a few things. The first is I'm really honored to have been a part of the property tax task force that was put forth by the governor. I'm very impressed with the work that was done. There's a lot of intelligent people that were working to solve the property tax issue. And there were 12 recommendations that were presented, and they were just that, recommendations. And I really hope that the legislature does take them up in this session and they do pass, because I see a lot of good in those recommendations that I hope does see the floor of this legislative session. The second thing is school is starting soon, so watch out for those kiddos. And then the last thing is, when I was younger, I don't remember politics being this contentious. Maybe there weren't, maybe I was just naive, but I see a lot of folks accusing the other side as being evil, heartless, so on and so forth. And this is coming from all sides, left, right, top, bottom, every which way. And I've mentioned this before, that I have 50% or more of my friends and family are on the opposite side of the political spectrum than I am. And we still love each other. We still have amazing conversations, debates, discussions, and just trying to see all sides of the problem that we're all facing. And I just wanted to share a quote that I found. The English author and philosopher G.K. Chesterton, often referred to as the Prince of Paradox, once said, "Hope is the power of being cheerful in circumstances that we know to be desperate." I wanted to share that because some people that I really admire, they're losing hope in the future. And I don't want that to be a world that my children grow up in. And so I ask all of my friends, my family, my colleagues, my constituents, everyone to don't lose hope in the future. Choose happiness in the world. There's a lot of it if you open your eyes. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments, Councilor Vasecka. It's a good reminder. Thank you. Councilor Campbell.
Those comments were a tough act to follow here.
No kidding.
So I just want to point out, going back to the topic of property taxes, Governor Gianforte signed legislation last year for the property tax rebates. The opening time period was August 15th and goes to October 1st. I encourage everybody out there that paid property taxes fiscal year 2023 or tax year 2023 to go to getmyrebate.mt.gov to learn more, to see if you qualify, and go through the steps to get potentially up to $675 back on your property taxes. So thank you.
You bet. Thank you for that public service announcement. It's good. It's fresh off the date there. Thank you, Councilor Campbell. Councilor Jones? Okay, thank you. Councilor Farmer?
I'll pass, thanks.
You bet.
I'll pass.
Councilor Nugent? Okay. Councilor Savage?
I'll pass, thank you.
Okay, you bet. And Melson?
Just a quick note to say thanks to staff going through my first budget. I relied on a couple of staff members to demystify the process for me, and I just want to say thanks. And I know that it's really difficult for all of us. I can only imagine what it's like being a department head. So yeah, thanks to our dedicated staff for all the work that they do tirelessly, day in and day out.
Thank you. I know that means a lot to them. It means a lot to me too. Thank you. Councilor Becerra?
Just my gratitude both to you, Mayor, for your thoughtful approach to making this an improved budget, and also to staff for trying to find those pennies under the cushion, and for your very thoughtful approach to the austerity measures that were asked of you. So much appreciated.
Well, thank you so much for that, Councilor Becerra. And President Sherrill.
Yeah, thanks. Quickly, I want to echo my colleagues' thanks to everyone. This was a much better budget process. I think we started improving it, really improving it last year with then President Jones started doing the amendments earlier. I think we improved it even more under the plan as you proposed it. I was a little suspicious of whether that was going to work to do amendments that quickly, but we did it, and we all took the time to discuss and debate the amendments. And I appreciate all of my colleagues for taking the time to do that. We scheduled an extra meeting, and we really dug into it, and I think the reasons why we did not pass them are all on the record, and I'm happy to discuss that with anyone. And then I'm doing a public service announcement because this happened to me. We've been talking about post-storm, the cleanup and the concerns about branches and trees, what they call widowmakers. Guess they only kill men, but in the very small, brief storm last night, we had a giant limb come back down very quickly in our, the storm came up quickly in our backyard, which, would have been a real problem if we'd been sitting at our back table. So I just think everyone needs to, we didn't even know that limb was cracked. It didn't come down. It was clearly cracked. It didn't come down from the wind itself, came down because it was already cracked from the storm the other night. So I think that especially if you have areas that your kids and your family are in regularly, you need to take a look up and really look at that tree. We had absolutely no idea, and had it fallen on our dog or one of us, I might not be here debating the budget with you right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sherrill. It's an excellent reminder. That is a message that we at the city and the county continue to put out there, which is to look up. And in particular, and I will just want to emphasize that storm damage was so comprehensive on both the public and private lands that we don't even know what might be damaged out there. So when there are storms that pick up like last night and even earlier today, it's really important that we consider that and take shelter, because it's really something, and it will be for a while here in Missoula, unfortunately. So with that note, everybody be safe out there. Thank you so much for a great public hearing this evening and a great meeting, and I'll adjourn the August 19th meeting at 8:20 p.m.